listening to the Aligned Birth podcast. Welcome. And you have both hosts here today. So you have Doula Rachael here, you have Dr. Shannon here, and we are going to chat about rest today. That's the main goal. Now, this podcast, yes, is obviously Aligned Birth. It's geared towards our birthing community. So that's preconceptive birth, postpartum, perinatal, all of those things. But these types of rest are kind of like a global, like everybody could do well with these. But we also want to highlight, we're going to talk about 7 types of rest. And then we want to highlight, okay, what does that look like in a pregnancy world, in a postpartum world, which is very, very difficult. Because you hear a lot of times like, oh, get some rest. And I say to people in the office all the time, oh, get some rest. And it's like, I don't know, when the world is spinning, there's lots of things going on. So it's kind of like, how do we rest? And if we maybe have some other ways and other definitions of rest, maybe that can help you feel more rested when you're like, oh, well, I can rest in this manner too. It doesn't just mean sleep, right? So I'm excited to chat about this today. I've been leaning into this in my brain anyways.
Welcome to the Aligned Birth Podcast. I'm Dr. Shannon, a prenatal chiropractor.
And I'm Rachael, a birth doula and childbirth educator. Together, we're here to bring you conversations about pregnancy, birth, and motherhood. From cesarean to VBAC, hospital to home births, we've experienced it all. We are high school friends who reconnected through our shared passion for health and birth. As moms to 2 young boys, we've both changed careers after our own transformative childbirth experiences.
Join us as we discuss the importance of a healthy body and mind throughout pregnancy, birth, and into motherhood. Our goal is to provide fun, interesting, and helpful conversations and interviews that inspire learning. When your body, mind, and intuition are aligned, you can conquer anything.
Sit back and relax, or grab a notebook and take some notes, or maybe listen as you enjoy a walk. However you choose to listen, we hope you enjoy this episode of the Aligned Birth Podcast. Before we get into the episode today, if you enjoy the content of this podcast, we would greatly appreciate your support in one of 3 ways. First, leave us a review or give us a 5-star rating. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners and make a bigger impact. Second, you can sign up for our newsletter. By doing so, you'll be the first to receive new episodes and exclusive bonus resources straight to your inbox each week. Lastly, you can become a direct listener supporter. Running this podcast requires significant time, effort, and resources. Your contribution, no matter the amount, helps us continue providing valuable content to a wider audience. Simply use the links in the show notes to make your donation, sign up for our newsletter, or leave us a review. Every contribution matters and is sincerely appreciated. If the Aligned Birth Podcast is a part of your weekly routine and you love what we are doing, please consider supporting us through one of these 3 options. Your support will create a ripple effect, allowing us to reach more listeners and make a lasting difference.
I'm excited to chat today, Rachael.
Hi, Dr. Shannon. I'm so excited for this topic as well. It is a very important one. It is one that I've learned a lot personally about how important true rest is, and that rest looks different for me. It looks different for you. It looks different for everyone. Rest doesn't mean sleep. And then how we are constantly weaving this in with our clients, with our birth doula clients and our postpartum clients, about understanding the importance of rest in the different ways. Because I think a lot of people assume when we say, make sure you're getting good rest and taking care of yourself, that we mean like sleeping. And I mean, I don't know about you, but like the racing mind deters people from sleeping or focusing on rest. And I'm the same way. Like it never fails. As soon as I lay down, my mind is just like going a million miles a minute.
Things. Yep.
Yeah. And so I think it's been an evolution for me. I'm definitely not great at resting, but as I've gotten older and tried to prioritize healthy ways of rest, I've gotten better at it a little bit. I've learned that like giving myself a time frame is good, and like 20 or 30 minutes is really all I need versus like an hour or 2, but it looks different for everyone.
It's different for everyone. And I think as we get older, so maybe there's moms on
I
there
don't know
that
who's getting
are a
older
little
here,
bit
Shannon.
younger.
Come
One of
on,
my
leveling
neighbors,
up. We are leveling.
I do like, that's right, as you level up. One of my neighbors sent me, it was this meme, and it was a thing from the Golden Girls when, God, which one was it? She's always the sassy one. There's always, hooking up with the boys. I can't remember which one she was.
I
It was
don't know their
Rose
names.
Blanche. I can't remember all the other names, but she was like, I'm 41 and 5'6", and I was like, wait a minute, because Rachel and I are both leveled
No,
up.
no. When I see memes that tell me how old characters are on TV, I'm like, no.
No.
Why do they make them look so old?
I know. I was like, okay, maybe I'm a Golden Girl. But anyway, where my brain was going was that it's like, I feel like, it's just changes, right? So I've definitely, Rachel and I have leveled up to a certain season in our life too. And so knowing, okay, rest looks different in your different seasons of life as
And
well.
how we can help with our people, how we're sharing about rest. Because what I've learned is, and I'm still working on this, is how I communicate. In order to get people on board with resting, I have to communicate it differently. And that's what I think we're going to talk about here. As far as like, we can't just tell people rest. Let's talk about all the different ways you can rest and kind of have some like, how do I build this in? How do I prioritize this? Like Hannah and I tell our clients, like, you put rest on your list of things to do, just like, baby registry, go to the grocery store, clean the bathroom, rest. And then you get to like, for your productive A-type listers, like, check it off. Rest is productivity.
Well, and here, I hear a lot of the excuse of, I know that there's not a lot of time to rest. Like if you're a mom, you're busy, but I'm going to be real blunt. That is just, your priorities are not in the right order. And I hate to say it, but something's got to give. And if you're not careful, your health and wellness is going to be what gives. And
it's hard to see that.
And so sometimes you just got to be real. Like sometimes you do need to be kind of like, punched in the throat with it a bit, with like, what are your priorities? And this is an important one to put on your list. And again, too, it doesn't have to be this like big thing.
Right.
So
I think that's important, because I think that was the first thing for me as a new mom. I would have said, there's no way, like, I don't have the ability to.
Well, I don't nap.
Right. Well,
and so I'm like, so when people said to rest, I'm like, all I would think of was sleep. And I was like, well, I just don't nap well.
Yeah.
So what am I supposed to do?
I've never considered myself a good napper, but I do lay, like, when I can and my day allows. And again, it's not every day. It's like when my day allows, or when my body is kind of like really speaking to me, like, you've got to slow down. 20 or 30 minutes of like no devices, no input, even from my kids, and kind of like just quiet and lay with my eyes maybe closed. Like, I don't usually go to sleep, but it's like a reset for my body and my brain. But I have to like remove input. Like, I have to take away like demands coming at me. And that is rest to me. Not a full-on nap. Like I said, full-on nap can sometimes make me feel kind of worse. Like if I like actually fall asleep for like an hour or two, which is like never, but when I do, I kind of wake up sometimes feeling not great.
So I will come home, like sometimes, or even on the weekends, trying to think with my husband's crazy schedule. So he's a firefighter. So obviously he's got, like sleep disturbance things or whatnot when he's on shift. But like, he is so good at napping and just like turning things off. Like I'll be laying in bed next to him, like in the middle of the day, and I'm like, I'm reading a book, and I look over and I'm like, how do you do that? How do you freaking just turn everything off? And then you talk to him and he's like, oh, you just do it. I'm like, anywho.
Different.
So I like glare at him, but
Yeah.
I also want him to embrace it, because I'm not going to lie, for a hot minute I was like, well, that's great. Look who can rest. And I would be kind of like bitter
Annoyed.
about it. Yeah. Because I'm like, well, I'm up and doing things, and why aren't you? But now I lean into it, because also I'm just like, I know he needs the rest. Right.
Sure.
Because that's kind of, and so I'm like, okay, let you nap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Clean in the kitchen when you wake up. No, I'm just kidding.
Nap envy.
No, I was definitely glaring at him. So again, too, rest doesn't mean just sleep. It's not just like, the hours of sleep. And then there's the aspect of some, like, your world might be chaotic. And so rest to you might be, having to go and do like a yoga retreat or something like that. And like seeking out. And yes, that can be rejuvenating and can give you some rest. But when you come back, everything's
You
still
gotta
there.
have some stuff in place.
So you need things here that you can do. So that's where we're going. It's also not, this topic isn't also like a rejuvenation retreat or something like that, which those are all well and good. Like I love
those
them.
are
I do
great.
them.
Yeah.
But
But
that's
that doesn't
not,
tend to give you everything you need to sustain you.
Mhm.
So we need to look at like the 24-hour window and then the
Mhm.
7-day window and kind of what are we
Yep.
doing in those time frames on a regular basis. Very tangible, very doable. And then yes, go do those retreats. Those are awesome. But I also like talking about rest and that, and we have this here like as that definition of rest is a state of that physical, emotional, and mental. So some people equate rest just to physical, but there's also the emotional and mental. And that's like when I talk about it, I have to have that like no input. Because I get that overstimulation with my day, like on a regular basis. And I've learned that just pure silence is so giving to me. So I'm tending to the emotional and the mental relaxation. This allows our bodies and our minds to recover from the stress of daily life. And I think that's important because when you talk about the retreat, I think that's good, but it is really hard to like bank rest. Hannah and I have been talking about this recently with doula work. Is like if I have a period of time where I don't have a birth, I'm always like, I wish I could bank this downtime so that when I have a long, hard birth, I can just tap into it and it not completely deplete me. But the reality is when I'm hit with a long birth, I'm like, it still takes it out of me no matter how much rest I have. Like it's like you can only bank it so much. That's why you have to have the daily practice of rest. It's essential for our overall health and well-being, and just as important as diet and exercise.
Because this, well, I guess I'm looking at sleep as more of like that's when your body really does some healing and going, there's more to it with sleep as far as you've got to hit all the different, parts of the sleep cycle, all that. But yes, the rest is like it gives your body that chance to get into a little bit of that parasympathetic mode. And when we're in that parasympathetic mode, that's the rest and digest mode. And so that allows your body to feel calmness and to heal. Like that's the big, and that's why when you don't feel well, you don't want to do anything. Your body's telling you, okay, you need to stop doing what you're doing.
In order to fully like recover and do what it needs to do. Yeah. No, nighttime sleep is super important. This like, can't deny that. I mean, sleep, we know science has told us like sleep is so, so important. So good nighttime routine, going to bed, giving yourself that, whatever your sweet spot is, 7-8 hours. Some people are more, some people are less, but sleep is so important.
Segue a little bit into where I was going to go with that. But one of the things I hear from patients most often when they've started under care is, and they're always like surprised by this. And I usually I don't mention anything at the beginning, but they come in and they say after they've been under care for, however long, part of their care plan, that they are sleeping better. And whether that means longer, whether that means going through the sleep cycles better. And this doesn't mean, always, but it's really cool when I look at chiropractic care and helping the nervous system function better. And that usually relates into one of those first things is sleep. And it's across the board. It's my little ones, it's kiddos, it's adults as well too. And so that kind of highlights how no matter what stressors you have or whatnot, it can impact that rest. So that's like the sleep aspect of things. So that's I did want to mention that within this episode as well.
Getting adjusted, I always feel just so much better, and I sleep so much better. That first night,
I know.
First night is good. Sometimes the second night is the best. It's like a full 24 hours or something after. It just feels like I get, I notice it significantly, like how I fall asleep and how I wake up. And so I completely agree with that.
So so it's, That's a fun thing. That's always, I talk about that like side effect of chiropractic care.
Benefit, yeah. Even if that wasn't in why you go.
I was
Most
gonna
people
say
don't
most
go.
people. But then
So-
what happens is they come in, they give Justin, they're like, oh, I want to sleep well tonight. And it's always funny to them. I'm like, okay, well, let's do the sleep adjustment, which is nothing in particular. It's just like I had to do some attitude adjustments yesterday in the office. It was a hot mess. And I was like, I'm going to do what I can. And just no.
I'll just come
specific.
daily.
I know, right? It's like, I don't know. I need some help here. I did have a blog that I wrote several years ago. It was probably during COVID. It's called Building Resiliency. And we've talked about it on the podcast before. We've done building resiliency and like pregnancy and those type of things. But it's a good one because I outlined just some different things as far as I like that word resiliency because it's a little bit of you're gonna come across stressors, and so it's like how well can we adapt to them. Another word I like is adapt. So it's not necessarily like everything is easy peasy, and resiliency doesn't mean just like everything's calm. Like it's more of you're riding the waves and you're able to mesh back and forth in
like
that
respond and adapt.
And it's like an appropriate response. And then when we do have that response, we're able to come back to that state of balance or normalcy. But my youngest had some assignment this school year, and those growth mindset things and classes that they have, and they were talking about resiliency, and he had to define it, and then they had to come up with, they needed to mention someone in their life that they think shows resiliency. And so of course Dylan says to me, and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm gonna cry. That's very sweet.
So sweet.
I know, I love it. He said part of his definition was like pushing, like having grit and determination and able to push through. And when he said that, I was like, I don't want to be that. Like, so I talked with him a little bit because I was like, but it's also knowing when to not, right? And resiliency is also a little bit of knowing this deserves my effort, this doesn't, right? So this is a little bit of like, this deserves, I'm going to rest over here, boundaries. I'm not going to say yes to this over here. That doesn't really, I guess, I don't know if I'm just jaded and where my brain was at that day when he said that, but I was like, there is an amount of grit and pushing through. And remember, and I wanted to talk about this because I feel so much when moms are like, well, I'm busy. It's like, I've got to, I have things to do. And it's like, are our priorities straight? And if not, that's not really helping us be resilient. It's not really helping us rest. And so being able to say no to things and having a little bit of balance there too. So.
Yeah. I mean, kind of being busy is sort of like, there's some sort of like status connected to that too, of like, the busier I am, the better I am, the better mom, the better. So I think a lot of people are attracted to kind of keeping themselves busy. And we don't really reward the same way we do busyness and like balancing all the things and doing all the things. We don't reward prioritizing rest in the same way. And so that's like a cultural thing and a society thing. And so we, and everyone's busy. That's why I really try when people are like, how are you doing? I really, really try not to say busy. But the reality, I'm like, I am busy. Yeah, I'm also doing well.
And there's nothing wrong with that, especially if you've said, I want to say yes to these things. This is where I'm at. This is what I want to do. You just got to know other areas are going to give, and it's like, can you still make that can you still make a priority?
You have to find a way in the busy to prioritize rest and self-care. Like I have very, very firm boundaries on like my bedtime, like very firm boundaries. And so like, as far as like doing things through the week, and staying out late, like I really try to avoid it. Like, and so I have to say no to some things, but I'm like, I thrive in mornings. So like I'll sign up and do all the things or whatever. Like, but so I can be busy during these hours, but then after these hours, I am like done.
Yeah.
And that's a boundary that helps me protect, I think, my sanity and my well-being, because I'm like, okay, I'm going to get the sleep I need. But with new moms and stuff, and we run into it too, and they are
your
busy.
Baby listening to your boundaries.
Right. And that's like, it's always like, be graceful, like give yourself grace for like the seasons of like, okay, it really may not be realistic to feel like you have a lot of time and energy to rest. But that's where we are going to break it
Go through the
down
list.
and
Yeah.
kind of be like, listen to these 7 things. If you feel like you're one of those people that feels too busy to find rest, listen to these 7. And if you can find anywhere to weave one of them in, then you're taking a step in the right direction. I think, do not feel like you have to do all of these things. We're trying to like introduce all the different ways you can incorporate rest. So think about what resonates with you and what can you build in with your schedule, with your family schedule, with your, where you're at in your life. So this is all about like one little baby step at a time. I mean, I think both you and I have been we're constantly evolving in how we take care of ourselves. This is not a should. We're not shoulding on anyone. We are just encouraging. And we thought that this would be a helpful, like, let's break it down in all the different ways we can rest and like take what resonates with you and leave the rest. If you have nowhere to squeeze this in, then I definitely would say, let's have a come to Jesus moment, because then I'm worried, you got to take care of yourself. You got to be able to find like 10 minutes at a minimum in a day to take care of yourself. And then back to the grit thing. I think it's balance and it comes with maturity, but knowing when grit, because I get why you were like, no, I don't want to be perceived as that. But I'll tell you, I think it's a compliment for you, because to do, especially the type of like long distance running you do, and for the success you've had with your chiropractic practice, like you have to have grit. So Jay and I talk about this a lot with like trying to figure out how to parent our kids, because like we want our kids to have grit and know when to use it. When is grit going to help us get to something that'll reward us, or because we have to get through a hard thing in order to like feel relief? Like you got to know, and it's not just about exercise or whatever, but sometimes you got to study really hard for a test, and that takes grit. You got to dig in, you got to be uncomfortable. Maybe you're a little bit more tired during that time, or maybe it's a sport, and it's going to hurt when you first start trying to, Everett's doing cross country now. Like you're going to have some soreness, but if you want to do this, you have to keep going. That is grit, right? Yeah. So I think there's a yin and a yang with grit and rest. Like, I don't think being, resilience, I think you got to have both. Yeah. If we just stay in a constant state of rest or doing nothing, like that's not good either.
No. And that's not, so you can, and I've had seasons of life where I did have aspects of pushing to perseverance and knowing, okay, when do we switch gears, and how do you push and when to not? No, all of that makes sense.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. Oh no, he meant it in a good way, but it was a fun way to open up the conversation. Yeah. As far as like, okay, resilience means that, but like I need you to check in with yourself too.
It's not all grit all the time. Yeah, it's not killing yourself. It's knowing
not
when.
Killing yourself. Yeah. Because he's my one that's like me that will do that.
Yeah.
So that's why I was like, oh, I really don't want him to get to that overwhelm.
To see that that's the only way for like success or for, being rewarded in life. I completely
my other kid, I'm agree. Like, I need you to push. So it's, there's differences there. But understanding, I could see how he could take it to, a certain point. So
yeah. All about balance.
So my, I have a Garmin watch. That's my go-to just with exercise. I tend to wear it during the day. I don't really wear it at the office, when I'm adjusting, but every other day I will wear it. I probably wear it too much, and I probably get a little bit too much into like data tracking mode with it, because I'll wake up and I'll be like, oh, watch says I got this sleep. And my husband's always like, oh my God, just ignore it for a minute, like, because he's the cool one, right? I'm overanalyzing everything. But I love the data sometimes because there's an aspect on there and it's called the body battery. And I never, ever really looked at it, because I would look at like, okay, well, what's my activity level, right? So like, have I met the activity movement goals? Have I logged all my exercises and workouts? But I was like, body battery. I'm like, I don't know, whatever. Like I never really looked at it. And then I would track my cycle on or whatever. So recently though, I had started looking at it, because what it does is it takes your rest and how good was your sleep, and then gives you a number as far as like, okay, we can push today, or we can push, but you've really got to be careful because you didn't charge your battery enough last night. And so you've really got to be careful. And so what's been fascinating is to watch my evenings if I've had a productive or busy day, watch my evenings of what it considers to be a restful evening. And then I look at, well, what did I do? And it wasn't just sleeping, but it was like calmness in the evening, no electronics, things like that. Or most of my, or laying on my acupressure mat, doing my tractioning, like things like that was a little bit of like stillness. But it was neat to see that my watch would tell me, oh, you had a really good, like restful evening. So you were able to be productive, and then your sleep was more productive as well.
So that's like filling up your body battery, like kind of
body battery,
keeping it at a good level. But
I just
the
found
balance.
that fascinating. But it was the balance, and it didn't mean like, it doesn't mean, oh, you need a restful evening. Well, you got to go to bed at 6 o'clock tonight because you really messed up today. You ran too much or whatever. So, and I also look at that with my cycle as far as I'm like, okay, well, my exercise was a bit different because this is where I'm at in my cycle. I'm feeling this way, and, you know, tracking the rest with it too. But I liked that concept and aspect of the body battery. And it was very eye-opening as far as how my body was perceiving what I was doing as restful. And it wasn't sleep. You know, for me, it was a lot of like stillness. And it wasn't, and sometimes it's mental rest, you know, and we'll get through that. We'll go through those now. Maybe that's a segue into.
Yeah, we can do it. We can get into it. Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. So there are 7 kind of main types of rest, and we're going to go into them, but there's physical rest, mental rest, emotional rest, sensory rest, creative rest, social rest, and spiritual rest. So we're going to kind of talk about each of those, and then kind of how to achieve them, right? And how to make it happen. So let's talk about like each one and what they are, and then we can talk about the ways in which we can weave them into our daily lives.
And then we'll try to, the spin of pregnancy, postpartum, if you're looking at this from.
I don't even know if there's a spin. Well. It's just this applies to everyone. Pregnancy, new mom, postpartum phase, and then like the ever after of motherhood. Like, this is why we wanted to do this. I think it's so applicable across the board, regardless of where you're at.
That's right. Rachel dropping truth bombs here. You get rest, and you get rest, and you get rest. Okay, physical rest is our first one. I mean, this one is probably the most self-explanatory, but as far as like giving your body, your muscles time to recover and repair. Physical rest doesn't have to be like where you're physically not doing anything. Those days are very good. But a lot of times for me, like restorative yoga is a little bit of rest. And it's not where I'm trying to like push and do crazy different poses and things, but it's where I'm really trying to like stretch a bit more and lean into that flexibility and doing like holding poses for a little bit longer. Like it's just a different, you do it with a different lens, but rest in the sense of not as much vigorous exercise in your day.
Yeah, I think it can be like just a slower day for some people, or it can be that find the movement, if you still want to incorporate movement in your day that feels good to you, but that it isn't at a high intensity level. Love stretch day, love yoga day, walking, things like that can help give you a rest day. And I mean, if you're doing any sort of like intense workouts, it's recommended to definitely have a rest day, but that doesn't mean you do nothing, right? I think finding something that feels good to you that is different than the workout from the day before. Love a rest day. I like a walk or a yoga. Yeah. Those are my favorites.
Sometimes my rest days are doing nothing though. Like if I'm training for something really intense, like, I'm not doing anything, but I might be foam rolling, which is, it's not like a vigorous, activity. But using the massage gun on some of those days to help muscles like recover and repair there too. But yeah, I know.
And I think with like pregnancy specific and early postpartum, knowing like you're not doing any vigorous workouts, so really leaning into movement that feels good. So diaphragmatic breathing is a great way to move, but also rest. And then the stretching, massage, the walks, gentle movement in those recovery periods are really important for your body to recover.
And like you can these types of rest aren't like individually, not like mutually exclusive. So it's not like you're only doing physical rest, because if I'm doing physical rest and I'm going for a walk, I'm also processing a lot of things. So that gives me a little bit of mental rest, because maybe I'm not listening to anything. I'm just hanging out with my dog, like those type of things. So it's kind of cool when you can it'll cross over, because we'll go over some of those other types too, especially when you were mentioning that. And I was like, looking at your breathing, okay, that can go and tap into other parts of rest as well too.
Yep,
so
I love that.
Segueing into our second one, mental rest, giving our brain time to recharge, process information. Obviously, sleeping is really good with that. Improving focus and productivity means taking a break from constant stimulation. And so this is kind of what you were talking about earlier, in needing, just feeling overstimulated with everything. And so emotional rest or mental rest is going to kind of go into a little bit of like sensory rest as well too. But that checking out for a minute. Mental rest can even be like sitting in like silence, I guess, too, and letting things just sit for a minute.
Yeah, I think you have to be willing to kind of play with this a little bit and figure out, if you're going to take a 20-minute break and you're trying to focus on mental rest, is it that, a walk, but not listening, not putting headphones in, but just like walking, being outside, being, hearing the wind and the leaves and the birds, and like, or is it lying down and putting in like a guided visualization, or is it no input? For me, I have to truly have no input. I gravitate towards stimulation. Like I kind of always want to have a podcast going. I always want to be like listening to music. Like I'm constantly like, I that's my go-to. So I have to really intentionally like turn things off. But so like, I think playing with it to see like what is the degree that really helps you feel better after 15 or 20 minutes. Because I do think like, if you're not like aware of like, okay, I'm going to go maybe lie down on the couch, or I'm going to watch the TV. That might work for helping you feel better.
And that might be physical rest, right? Literally just being still. But
I think when we have the constant input, what's happening with the mental, where we're at. And I think, again, I say this because I have to really exercise turning off some of the input. It's hard for me, but that's what makes me feel the best after like a 20-minute break. And so we're just kind of trying to encourage people to like, to play around, turning on your phone, putting on your phone on do not disturb. Like that's something I've been doing a lot lately, because again, the dings and the beeps from your phone take you out of whatever you're trying to do and distract you. And we are in a world where we're having constant demand. Someone sends you a text, it's like you got to respond right away, or phone calls. But how many times does your phone ring, but that it's actually someone who needs you? Like it's a lot of spam calls or whatever. Like put it on do not disturb, and like you can tend to all those notifications when you are ready. I think if we're taking a mental break, if it's a walk or a lying down, phone, like, do not disturb.
And I think we tend to go to our phone during rest. I will say, like, if you're just kind of calm and relaxed, let me just scroll.
I'll lay and scroll.
Things. And it's like that. This one might probably be one of the bigger ones to do, to like, okay, can I really change that sensory input to the brain and like remove the eyes a bit, or remove the ears, like whatever it is, remove something there. It's like in yoga when we do like bounce poses and then we close our eyes and I'm like, whoa, I have some issues. I'm like, what just happened? I can't even stand up straight. Like those type of things where I'm like, oh my gosh, I realized so much on that. So, and there's, I got to mention too, like vagus nerve is going to love some of these things as well too. And that's like the calming part of the nervous system and very, very healing as well too. So
yeah. And I don't want to knock like
intentional with this
social media scrolling. I really love like Instagram reels full of like cute dog videos.
They make me laugh.
Like I laugh out loud with my husband at night, laying in bed, scrolling reels. What I have to do is set a timer.
Mhm.
Okay. It is like really hard to stop if I don't set a timer. So like, I don't want to knock like that, laying down and just like be like, I'm going to look through IG reels because they really do make me like sometimes feel like
Some of them bring me joy. Yeah.
bring me joy. But
So-
then it's like, I don't know if you pay attention to this, there's like a tipping point
There is.
that it starts feeling icky, but then I can't stop.
Uh-huh.
It's so strange. But the more I become aware of it, I'm like, okay. But the timer is really great because I'm like, I know there's a depreciating factor here that at a certain point it'll stop feeling worse. So if I am going to go maybe try and rest or lay down or even before bed, I will say 10 minutes, scroll the reels, check it out, and then turn it off.
Turn it off. Yeah.
And then
That's
so I
good.
feel like there is a balance there because some people, they do like to veg out and watch TV. And to them, that is turning their brain off because they're not thinking about
Yeah.
the demands of life or work or whatever. So like do that, but try to have the healthy boundary around it too.
It's a little bit of, that's where I struggle because I did some like unsolved mysteries like on Netflix the other day, and I was like, and next thing I know, you don't want to watch a movie, but I'll watch 4 freaking episodes and it's 4 hours later and I'm like, what just happened? So finding balance in there, but just trying to solve some mysteries, y'all. But
Love me some true crime.
The timer, no.
A timer's good. Timer,
yeah.
or you got to have some limits, and like your phone you can set limits on your phone so you get a notification once you've sort of hit it. Again, we have technology, so let's use it. But so it's not about not doing it or burn the phone down. Like just understand, and then paying attention. How do you feel after you do XYZ? After you watch a show for an hour, after you watch a show for 10 minutes, after you scroll social media, like pay attention. And then that helps guide you with setting those boundaries. And this takes work. I'm not saying it's easy. Mental rest is hard.
Yeah, because this is also, meditation can kind of fit in here. And I always think of the book, Eat, Pray, Love, or the movie too with Julia Roberts, when she's trying to like meditate and she's trying to meditate, right? Like those are the key things where it's just like, there's so many people in the office doing adjustment. They're like, wait, let me try to relax. And I'm like, I do the same thing. I'm not like, there's no judgment here. I'm like, oh, I'm right there with you. But it's like, it's very eye-opening there. But when she's like trying to meditate and then her brain is just like screaming and going, and she looks up and it's literally been a minute and it's like, oh my God. So there's that too. But it's so important to shut things down.
To try. Just try, I guess. I don't know. What do you say? You got to try.
You got to try. Yeah.
You got to
you got to keep trying.
Introduce
it's not always
it.
going to be the same. Yeah.
And know with meditation, it takes practice. But that you can try for a minute. I keep saying try, but I don't know. Do it for a minute or a few minutes and just give yourself a chance to see what that feels like. I think there's a lot of resistance around it for many people, including myself.
I know. But that's part of our mental rest. Emotional rest is our next one. Here, what is that? When we let our emotions rest. This is giving you time to process feelings and emotions, to kind of understand a little bit more of yourself there, but to prevent, I guess, a bit of burnout as well too. So maybe a little bit of that, like, just keep going, just keep pushing, and not those check-in things. And I mean, a little bit of emotional rest too. You just mentioned with, the scrolling, like, how do you feel after social media? What are the emotions so did it maybe bring a little bit of rest? And if it did, that's great. And then you hit that plateau. And
I think scrolling and watching TV really doesn't allow us to process where we're at. It keeps us in an avoidance state. So again,
and the numbing, that's another thing too, where I think we do a lot of things. I mean, exercise, when you do extreme exercise, sometimes what are your intentions behind it? Are you avoiding things? Are you trying to, there's lots of ways and things that we can do and use to numb ourselves in the aspect of not wanting to feel things.
Yeah. Also, I think things like yoga, certain types of yoga, running, walking without stimulation, like those help me process my emotions when I'm, those types of workouts. Now, other types of workouts are definitely help me sort of turn everything off, which means I'm not sitting with my emotions and I'm not, but that's a good. Sometimes we need
You don't
distraction.
have to do that every time. Yeah, this
No.
isn't like a.
But I like both of those. I like that movement can bring, but being aware of like, am I always doing the workouts that help me, that are making me turn it off? Or can I do some movements that help me tune in and feel? You know, I think we got to give our emotions a chance to surface, to exist, to flow through us. There's no right or wrong, you know. So I think this is an important one. I had to do this recently after a long birth.
Yeah.
A long birth that really took a toll on me. The emotional rest I had to force in order to process. And that meant kind of being with myself a little bit more. And that was really hard, but it was necessary.
But that's so cool that you leaned into that, you know. It was difficult. I sometimes want to go. I know we've talked about like retreats and not using a retreat to like find rest or whatever, but I'm like, I kind of want to go to those where they take your phone and they tell you not to talk. I'm gonna be like, okay, I just want to see you do that. And I'm like, I kind of want to do that.
Well, it shows you can do it. I can be without my phone. How good did I feel without my phone? Good did I feel, you know, away from the stress of life, even though it's still there? No, so it kind of helps you see like, oh, like this is good for me. And then I want to do it again and again. I'll never forget the first time I did a solo retreat, like it was a handful of years ago by myself. It was 2 or 3 nights. I knew no one. I didn't want to know anyone. This wasn't like I wanted to take a friend. I didn't. I didn't want to know anybody. I didn't really want to even talk to that many people. Of course I did.
Right.
But life giving, and it gave me confidence. It helped me understand that doing this for myself was a good thing and to do it more often, and then trying to incorporate some of those things into my daily life.
I love it. Did we do that around at the same time?
I think we
did a yoga retreat November, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I can't remember what it was
we talked about it on one of our walks.
I think we did.
Because they were so similar.
But yeah, I wanted to go too. I didn't know anybody. I knew the lady that was running it because it's through a yoga studio near me. But you know, I got there and I was like, well, hot dang, I know people. It was really funny. I was like,
that's awesome.
Well, I don't know, but I know you. I love it. But it was exactly what I needed to be. But that was, I know. So as much as we talk about don't use a retreat, but sometimes you can use a retreat.
It's all about like
it's all connected.
Doing them at different times. I think the retreat helps you with tools of things you can, but it's knowing that retreat is not going to fix.
Yeah.
It's not going to fix everything, but it gives you the tools, gives you the confidence, but you have to be willing to come back and try to have the daily practices or whatever to help have that long-term sustainability with it, I think.
I like the talking to a trusted friend. That's one of the things on here. So it's kind of spending time alone, avoiding stressful situations. That's, you know, as best you can, or prepping yourself if you know you're going to be in a stressful situation. Talking to a trusted friend, practicing self-care, spending time in nature, journaling. I still am very adamant, like I have to have my alone time in the morning. It was like non-negotiable. And now that my kids are older and they're going to school later in the morning, I still haven't changed my time when I get up. So I have a little bit more time in the morning. I'm still playing around with that though, because I'm like, do I need this much time? Should I get more rest? Like I'm playing around with it, but that is, my journaling time is very, very important. I think it's nice because I get to process things, but I do a lot of talking during the day. So it's nice that when I process that, it's like quiet and I'm not talking, I'm like writing it out. So maybe I really like that. But also talking with a trusted friend, I have to be very, very intentional about who I'm sharing things with. And this is just knowing me personally and how I approach friendships and how I deal at what my attachment is, and do I have secure attachments, avoidance, you know, all of those type of things. It's knowing that about me, and then knowing, okay, this person is a safe space for me so that I can be a little bit more vulnerable. every time, I'm thinking of one person in specific, every time we get together, it is literally life-giving. Whether she shares or I share, because there's a back and forth, but it's so much of, I feel so heard. And I think that's the big thing when you're trying to do this emotional rest, and maybe you're trying to process things that's really hard to do in a big group, and a big group can literally be 3 people. It's really hard to do in a group setting sometimes, because sometimes maybe you don't feel heard, or there's just a lot of back and forth with that. And so finding that person or having someone, whether that's, counseling, therapy, what it be, learning tools and strategies to help process the feelings and emotions, and going through like the feelings wheel and all of that. But that is always very, very life-giving for me. And that's been as of, late 30s, early 40s, where I've really, really focused on that.
Yeah. No, I think that's so true. And it's so helpful. I actually listened to a podcast or something recently talking about how when we retell, like if we had like a stressful experience or a fight with our husband or a fight with our other best friend or whatever, something kind of stressful has happened, that when you share it with multiple people, like over and over again, it really makes it hard to work through it and process it. And if whoever you're talking to, if they're like kind of getting stressed with you or getting riled up with you, it can like reinforce that stress. It's like it doesn't really help you work through it. So like really choosing intentionally who you're going to share with, and really minimize like the repetitive nature of sharing it over and over again. And so I think that's something I think I've learned as I've gotten older. You think about your 20-year-old self versus my 40-year-old self. Like it was all about sort of telling everyone. And now I'm like, I don't really want to. Jay, really, when it comes down to it, he's it. And I like that, because I don't want to relive my stressors over and over again, because that makes it feel worse. And I think if people can see that, and I think sometimes if they're looking for like an answer, you got to really think, who can I go to who will listen here and maybe provide advice if I ask for it, and who won't kind of be, you're so wrong or you're so right. They're going to be kind of balanced. I don't know. And that's hard.
Well, and who can you be completely vulnerable with to tell the whole truth of your story? And I think that's it. You're not just hiding the parts. And that's a big part of it, because then you don't necessarily need someone to be like, well, this was right, this was wrong. They just need to be like, yeah, that was a really hard situation.
Yes. That's like ideal. That's ideal. That's ideal. And so, and I think that's where like a counselor who is like trained, a therapist, someone who like does this, is so beneficial, to being that like non-biased, listening, source of guidance in a really positive way, to give yourself a place to go where you can let it all out without having to go like talk to family and friends about it. I don't know. Easier said than done, but definitely an important one. And realizing that every time we go out and share about our stressors, it's just magnifying it. And then you got to deal with like that person maybe asking questions. Like maybe you just want to tell them one time, be done, but then they are like asking you, how you doing? How's this going? What happened with it? And maybe you've moved on. I don't know. Like, do you want to rehash it over and over again? I don't know. Choose wisely. But verbal processing, I think, is good. Like sometimes just having a dump of like getting it out, but then not feeling like anything has to be fixed.
Exactly. And that's where I've seen things where spouses will communicate and kind of say, if someone's starting to share a story, what's the goal in this? Do you want solutions, or is this just like, just let it all out and let me listen, and it's kind of being like, okay, well, what do you want? Now, I want to touch on like a prenatal postpartum aspect of this, is in like the unpacking of your birth story or things like that. Like that can also provide emotional rest. I do journal, but I have typed out very significant things that have happened. I like to write. And so I feel like I communicate much better in writing. So I'm so glad we have a podcast where I have to talk. It's funny. It pushes me out of my comfort zone a lot. I'm like, oh, that sounded way better on when I wrote it out. But I like to write. And so I will write out those things. So I wrote out, like I've written, when I ran Boston Marathon, I wrote that out. We had this car accident. I wrote out all the things. And it wasn't necessarily like I felt this way. It was like, no, this is what happened. Like, this is literally what happened, like a play by play. And I don't know why that processes it. That helps me process it. And so maybe an aspect of processing, birth or pregnancy, keeping that little pregnancy journal or things like that, just to process the emotions of it, because it's a big emotional time, pregnancy, postpartum.
Well, and a tip we share too is that if you're not a person who likes to write, if you are, you're probably already writing, but writing is a great way, and removing expectations. So one tip is, like we do this with some of our clients when we encourage them to write out their birth story, is it doesn't have to be perfect. Just like brain dump, write it out. Or the other tip is just do a voice memo. Like on your phone, you can record it and it'll transcribe it. You can have the recording of it, get it out, articulate it, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And then if you want, you can always come back, and if you want to like make it pretty or whatever, you can. But the emotional process of release is just good just to get it out. So either a voice memo dump,
it's not wrong,
or write it out. Yeah, no one's going to judge you. No one is judging you. Just get it out, process it. But this is also so important for pregnancy. There is a huge component of the emotional, mental aspect when your body is preparing for labor. So any sort of stressors in your, previously before you were pregnant, or fears that you're having, being able to sort of emotionally process those, writing it out, talking with a therapist, or just dumping it, getting it out is so important. So that, I think, applies. So I'm glad you brought that up. It is important for processing the birth story, but it's super important on the front side, preparing for the birth, that you have emotional rest and release and rest, because that's going to help your body prepare for labor. So many people think about preparing for labor as either like building your gift registry or like childbirth education and physical prep, versus, and forget about the emotional, mental, because that's the hard work. I mean, guilty here too. So I love that you kind of brought that in, because I think that's really, it's applicable.
Well, yeah, and that's because you take a childbirth education class, you can be like, check, I have learned these things, I know these things, but when you're trying to unpack emotions, good luck with that,
That's
hard.
Yeah,
that's the hard work. So yes, so that's our emotional rest. Sensory rest. We kind of mentioned this a little bit before, but this is, I would be pretty confident in saying this is probably the most overstimulated world ever that we've ever been in.
We don't know what's coming, but it definitely feels like it is so stimulating.
It feels like there's just a lot.
Because it's so significant that being quiet and alone feels really hard for a lot of people, including
for
myself.
A variety of reasons. So resting the senses, giving our body time to recover from overstimulation, and then can help reduce that sensory overload. So this is going to be more of like turning off all the things.
Yeah, like light.
Turning off all the things.
Darkness. Yeah. Darkness is good. Sound, absence of sound. Maybe a white noise machine helps, because then you don't hear other sounds, but like really it doesn't have to be perfectly quiet, but thinking about what can not distract you. And then, like an eye mask or earbuds with white noise, beeps and blurps and kids, like whatever it is, we're constantly getting that input all day long. So we have to turn it all off to have that sensory rest.
I've seen things recently where we have like our brain is processing 30,000 different things every day. Well, that sounds great. And it's like, and that's even right. Stuff that, like, obviously that includes things that you're like not consciously aware of, because your body is also doing its thing. Like the heart is beating and the lungs are working and like your stomach's digesting. Like that's all sensory information to the brain as well too. This kind of goes in line with like meditation as well. So you can even add in breathing. I know when I do meditation, which I try, I'm trying to add it into the routine a bit. Sometimes I'm a bit hesitant with it because I don't want to sit in silence, right? Like that's, I don't want to feel all the
100%.
things. I don't want to, but when I am doing it, I try to focus first, and no matter where I'm laying, it's like I try to document and catalog all the things that are sensory coming in. So I will close my eyes. So I try not to have like that, but I'll be like, I feel the ground. I feel the yoga mat. I feel tension in my left hip. Like I try to catalog all the little things that I know are coming up to the brain, and the sounds. Because if I'm doing it, usually my dog's laying next to me. So I'm like, I hear my dog breathing. Oh my God. I hear the car outside. I hear the hum of the fridge in the morning. Like I hear sounds from the kids' room, like just their little white noise things. Like I try to catalog all the things, because now I'm like, okay, I have acknowledged them, and now I no longer need to acknowledge them. And then I kind of like push them away, and I have like a little broom in my brain,
I
and
love
I
that.
push them away. Like that's just been of recent, and that's ebbed and flowed over the years. But sometimes that helps to be like, okay, this is all that I see, that I feel, that's going on right now. And then you can say, okay, I have acknowledged it. Now it can be gone for a minute.
Yeah.
And
That's
then
awesome.
it'll come back. And then you say, okay, now you can go away again. And then it'll come back. And you say, now you can go away again. Like, I don't know. It's a process, but
I like a guided
that sensory.
tool for that. It helps me, reminds me to breathe, focusing on my breath, like acknowledge the things you feel and see, but then let them go. So there are tools out there too for that guided component if you need that help, because I definitely need that help if I'm going to do it.
Yeah. I like that that's out there.
And then for myself, for sensory rest, I kind of said it earlier about how I need like no input. So I have recently, or in the past year or so, started doing like an eye mask and really good earplugs. So like the plugs go in and it really reduces the sound I'm hearing. And then the eye mask for darkness.
Yeah.
Like I lay, and usually I thought this is going to help me like kind of drift off into sleep, either if I'm trying to sleep at night, if I'm trying to catch a nap, recovering from a birth, or even just like rest time. It just helps me force my senses, like my ear, it helps sort of mute the input and help me kind of achieve that true sensory rest. But I really, really, really also like calming music and guided visualizations too, because that helps me not think about all the million things I'm thinking about.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be the same thing every day. So, you can ebb and flow with it.
Play around with it
as well, Like that's what kind of nice about it.
And for new moms too, I think the touch is I think sensory
touched out.
rest, like it's not just, it's everything. And so we're getting lots of things coming at us, but when you have small children, especially new babies, you're holding a baby a lot and you're breastfeeding a lot, or you're doing a lot. And in those first handful of weeks, they really want to be skin to skin a lot. And that's biologically designed, but that can lead to feeling overstimulated and touched out. And so know that that's okay. So like if you're a new mom and you're like, I love my baby more than anything, also need a break.
Yes.
Like I think it's really important to like normalize like how like that duality of being a great mom, giving them everything you got, loving them so much, but also being able to hand them over for a period of time to your husband or partner or whomever's helping you out, so that you can get a break from you don't have to do it all, like in order to be a good mom. Like I was just talking to a client about this the other day about like, her admitting like, I guess sometimes don't want to do this anymore. Not like permanently, but like for this day, like I just need a break. And that's okay. That's sensory rest. So like babies fed. Now, maybe your husband can burp and change and take them for an hour. I don't know. Figure it out. But like, you don't have to be the one doing it all. Just know that leads to sensory overload if you are like, and some people are like, there's a whole, attachment parenting, or there's a whole, like, you can call it a whole bunch of things. But I feel like her martyrdom, it's a little bit like I have to do it all.
to be a good mom.
I don't know. Yeah, fill in the blank.
To be, like, why do you have to do it?
Yeah.
But yeah.
And one simple thing, and I think some people can handle that better, or, it doesn't stress them out. But knowing that if you're feeling sensory, just paying attention. I think it took me a long time to understand my sensitivity to sensory input, like, and how it impacts my stress levels. And so if you can pay attention to, like, all the things coming at you and what can you sort of minimize, and that includes sort of like taking a break from holding your baby, like, to reduce sensory overload, I think that can be really helpful.
Definitely.
Everyone's different. It's not a judgment. It's like trying to pay attention. And maybe you never feel sensory overload, so that doesn't impact you. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm just speaking from how I am.
No, I remember being totally touched out, and then you hit that, like, I guess, like a trigger point, or like a tipping point of, like, I'm overstimulated.
Yeah, I'm like the silent volcano when it comes to that kind of stuff. I'm good. And then I erupt of, like, I can't handle one more stimuli. Done.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to reduce the,
to getting to that point.
Yes.
Catch it before it gets there.
Yes.
I definitely feel this in the aspect of, always needing to be productive. And I vividly remember coming home from work when I was pumping. So this is when I was working out of the house, and I'd come in my little, like, cooler bag, and I had all my breast milk, and it was always like, look what I did today. Like, I was so productive. And I still will comment on things like, oh, how was your day? Well, I got this, and this done. And I'm just like, it could, I mean, obviously it's a good thing. It's it's drive and determination, but this is also a thing where you can be, productive out, and like it's always the next thing. It's always the next thing. And so resting creatively, giving your mind space and time to do new things. I saw a video, and I was trying to figure out what it was, because it was this woman, and she was giving these explanations, and it was like, bend the knees and turn the hips and open. And then it was like where she was standing up, and she kept going back and forth with that. And she was training these women. And I was like, what the crap are they training with? And it was on tennis court. So I was like, are we doing tennis? I don't know what's going on. But the caption had captured me. I wasn't resting at this point. I was scrolling. And next thing I know, all these women are up on skateboards. And they're like, bend and open and bend and close. And they were swaying, and they were moving on the skateboards, and they were having the time of their lives. And I was like, there's no gain from that, right? As far as productivity. Like,
yeah.
But how
it's just
freaking
doing
cool
something
is that?
enjoyable.
Doing something to just, like, enjoy it.
Yeah. No, again, society and culture reward productivity. And I think as parents, like, we are constantly asking our kids about what they did, and that is reinforcing that productivity is the only way.
This is very hard for me.
And that's where, we're evolving and growing and trying to do better and help our kids know that being productive is an essential part of living, and that, in society. Then the other side of it is, like, also rewarding and prioritizing rest, and that you don't always have to be producing to be valued or appreciated.
And you don't have to earn your rest. Man, maybe we should have started it off with that, because that's, like, I think that's the one that speaks truest to me, is that I don't have to earn rest. Like, you can rest. It's, like, you don't have to, well, I'll rest when, I have these things done. Yeah, there's certain things that need to get done in the day. I'm not meaning that, but it's not like a badge of honor or something that you have to, like, earn. I think it's important to, like, teach the kids that. And as someone who's, like, super productive and pushes that, that's where, like, I think parenting pushes me out of my comfort zone, where you're like, okay, because I perceive it as, I think that's how I would always perceive my husband. I was always taking a nap. Oh, you're so lazy. Why are you being lazy? To let my truth be told here. So
a nap is not lazy.
All of my baggage. but it's lazy. And so
No.
kind of unlearning some of those things. I think that this is why, you know what I have been called to? I have a piano in my house. I don't know how long. I've had it as long as I've had this house. It's like 17 years. And I have always wanted to learn how to play the piano.
Come on, girl.
But I have never done it. And
You
I
can
think
do it.
part of it is that what's that going to bring?
It doesn't
mean,
feel
the
well.
running-
Think about the ladies skateboarding.
As soon as I saw it, and I was like, well, gosh darn it, I want to play the piano. Because it's like running, at least it gives me a little bit of like health and wellness productivity,
Sure.
right? Like I'm leaning into that. So I'm being super vulnerable with people today because that's hard for me to do something just for the sake of doing it. But
Yeah.
that would give my brain such a different rest.
Absolutely. Lean
Such
into
a
that.
different rest.
Yeah.
No, I am.
And I think it's okay to admit, like, I mean, you're not going to hit all these things
No.
perfectly. And we all have the things that we're really good at and that are available to us. And then there's other things that aren't. So it's just being able to recognize, give yourself grace, and then say, can I try this out for a period of time and
Mhm.
see how that feels?
Yeah,
Because to
see how
say
it
it's not
feels.
productive, I think is not accurate.
Mhm.
Because it's productive in a way of giving you another outlet for your
Mhm.
brain, and that is
Mhm.
beneficial. So that is productive.
Exactly.
Try that out.
This one is difficult for me.
Yeah.
Do
and
you
that's-
do things that are like not productive, but like in this creative rest space? Do you have something that you do?
I do not.
Yeah.
I do not.
I'm wondering if I just wonder with women, moms, working moms, like if this is a difficult one in the aspect of we are so busy. And
It
so,
falls to the bottom of the list.
if this one, I feel like this is something else I got to do. Honestly, I think that's a big part of it too. I was like, oh my God, I just want to like sit and do nothing. Right. But I don't know. Maybe
No,
there's a
I think
new way to rest.
I think, again, creativity and doing things like that definitely are undervalued as far as like, because they don't have a high productivity reward, reward. So people don't lean into it. Or
don't
a lot of people
value it.
chalk themselves up to not creative.
Oh, yeah.
Renee Brown has a wonderful piece
Mhm.
on leaning how like we are far more creative than we
Mhm.
give ourselves credit for. I mean, I hear all the time, I'm not creative. It's like, oh, okay. You
Say
probably just
most would say that. Mm-hmm.
haven't like given
Tapped
yourself
into
the
it.
opportunity,
Mhm.
and that involves trying out different modalities of being creative. I think a lot of people assume, and I'm trying to give my kids that, because I've always
Mhm.
put myself in the box of I'm not creative, but I don't
Mhm.
really give myself the opportunity. So
Mhm.
creative, so this is like a little bit of choosing to be creative in different ways has benefits on our brains and our bodies. And then I think the element of creative rest is that we don't have to always be creating,
Mhm.
producing,
Mhm.
doing. So
Mhm.
there's this balance of pursuing a hobby that is like giving your mind a break in a different way, and then also giving yourself a break from always having to produce
Always producing. Yeah.
and give output. And this also kind of goes into like when we talk about the feminine cycle and like where our society is in, that we have to be in output all the time, always creating, always doing. Creating being like working,
That's
earning
it feels very
income.
male.
Yeah, it's very, very
Mhm.
male oriented. We have our
Mhm.
feminine cycle plugged into this 24-hour cycle of productivity. And we know with our cycles that we're not always in a creative mode. And so really leaning into cycle tracking and understanding when you're in the phase that is more rest and less do, and giving yourself full permission during that time, and know that you'll have energy at different times in the month to be more
To pick
creative or
back
do
up
more
with
things.
that. No, I was talking to someone in the office yesterday, and it was so funny because I was like, we were talking about that, and she wanted to lean into the cycles a bit more. And I said something. I was like, I feel like being a man is like Groundhog Day, because it's literally like the same thing, like that movie with Bill Murray when you just wake up every day. Hey, it's Groundhog Day, and it's the same thing over and over. He goes through the same, and I was like, I don't want to be like that. I kind of like having the variety. I like having that cycle through a whole entire month. You know?
I
I
do.
like leaning
It
into
also
that.
feels very challenging at times.
Mm,
When I'm
yeah.
in the rest phase and life is still demanding and I can't just be like, okay, you got to stop
Mhm.
now. It doesn't always work. It doesn't always line up. And so
Mhm.
that feels really
Mhm.
hard.
Mhm. No, but at least you know a little bit of why. So I like this creative one because it kind of goes. It's got two different paths. Social rest. Some things can be life-giving and some things can be depleting. It's like you made all these plans when you were ovulating and then all the plans come about and you are on your period and you're like,
Hi, it's me.
for the love,
I'm the problem. It's me.
holy. And so I have had to literally pep talk myself sometimes and be like, okay, Shannon, you got to be, you just go, you got to go, and you got to be Shannon and you can do this. And it's not a bad thing. It's just sometimes our world doesn't allow us to do that. But if you can, that solo alone time is huge. Is huge.
Really, alone time is all I need for everything.
I think that's the answer to it all.
So I love when someone once described to me, and like with introverts versus extroverts, and introverts can have a negative connotation to it, and understanding that like introvert, what that means is that like being more alone, being alone gives you energy more than being in a crowd of people or in a room or at a party or kind of socializing, talking, whereas extroverts get energy from being out, engaging with people face to face, talking, lots of people, lots of energy. That gives them energy. And for introverts, being alone gives them energy. So
Mhm.
you can still go to the party and still do the thing. You just have to then carve out time where you're alone or by yourself, or that, reducing that sensory input to help yourself recharge. And it's just understanding how we're wired and how we kind of engage in the world a little bit differently. And it's not negative. And I am an introvert for sure, at least socially. So I get it. But I like it helped me understand myself more and be like, okay, if I've applied it to when I go to conferences, if and when I do conferences, there's a lot of extroverting that has to happen. It's required. So I have to really prioritize like being in my room with like myself and really reducing kind of the in and out so that I can it's like breaks throughout the day where I'm by myself or going to bed early or something like that so that I have that alone time.
I like it. That's so funny to me that you are an introvert. Were you, because I've known you for a while now, and I feel like in high school, were you still an introvert in high school? Because I feel like you were more extrovert.
Yeah, I think I was. I think I am through and through an introvert.
But it's also learning who you are.
Yeah.
As life goes.
Because socializing has always brought me stress.
Okay.
I've done it, but it always brings me stress. Like sometimes we do things as we're supposed to do things, or we think we're supposed to do things. Like the duality of like our roles in life, and I just I did not have ease through the social outwardness that
That's interesting, but that's a really cool like self-discovery tool,
Yes.
I feel like I'm very much like Dr. Jekyll and Mrs. Hyde. Like I feel like I am both, and it is so tied to my cycle because I will be lifted up and like totally just in tune with going to a conference, big groups, like I will be totally into that. And a week later, that would be the worst experience of my life and completely draining. I feel like it literally just, maybe I let my like emotions like run the boat. I don't know.
Well, no, that's your
Steer
hormones.
the ship. Yeah,
it's your hormones.
I feel like a very strong like duality that I feel like an extroverted introvert or an introverted extrovert. It's interesting.
Yeah, no, and I think that's cool.
But it's like knowing that, and so knowing what I think we can all do well from a type of solo rest, though. Like even if you are an extrovert, because the introvert you can do well by pushing yourself and filling your cup in a different way. Maybe it's not like restful, maybe, but yeah, the solo time, especially if this is another good one if you feel touched out.
Well, and I think new postpartum too, like even if you think we were talking to a client the other day who's like, we love people, we love socializing, we love parties. And we were just trying to talk to them about how to prepare for their postpartum and trying to be like, that is great. If it's filling your cup and you're feeling good, like bring the people in, but know that like not everyone is going to feel good. So choose the people who you are letting in, like choose the people intentionally and set boundaries of like, come, but stay for like 30 minutes. And then if you want them to stay longer, you can always have them stay longer, but kind of setting the boundary up front of like a shorter visit. Like, so finding the balance of like, yes, I want people in. Yes, I think that's what I'm going to want. But when you're tired and you have a new baby, you know, kind of reassessing what social looks like and just paying attention to how you feel.
And same thing with pregnancy as well too, because it might be draining. And pregnancy has a tendency to push you so much. You're going to all these different places and you almost have to be a bit extroverted if you're going to kind of create that care team. Because I've seen some differences. I definitely see some differences in moms and if they aren't extrovert and pulling all these people in, sometimes that can play a role, you know, into that. So leading into.
And I like the last thing we wrote here in our outline about learning to say no. And that if it's not a heck yeah, it's a heck no when we're making plans socially. That's also been another really good thing to live by as far as like for me, especially choosing if I am going to extrovert myself, it's going to be something I really am into.
And no is a full sentence. I saw something too where talking about the aspect of no is a full sentence. And I like the definition of it. I can't remember what it was, but to me, it was more of I don't have to give an explanation. Like it's just no.
It's just no.
Because it's just no. So no is a full sentence. You don't have to give like an explanation too.
I think not explaining yourself or making excuses is so freeing. Like I've tried to do that with like when people are asking for, like if it's friends asking for play dates with the boys or socially or whatever, that it I don't feel like I need to lie. And if it's like if I don't have a true conflict, like I don't need to justify. It's just nope, I'm not available that day. Period.
Yeah, I'm definitely into that. Yeah, I can't do that day.
Yeah, and just leave it at that. Don't make it, because I stop people when if I'm asking for something and they know and they want to go into a diatribe. I'm like, you do not owe me any explanation. No is fine. I'm just checking with you, wanting to see if you were interested. No is fine. You don't have to explain it away and say it, you know, all the millions of things you have going on. I get it. No is fine. Like you can say it and not one thing else.
I like it. That might be the best part of social rest, saying no.
Yep.
Let's see. And our last one here, number 7, spiritual rest, allowing you to connect inner self, finding meaning, feeling grounded, fulfilled. This can be, we've talked about this in a couple of other aspects, because meditation, yoga can even help in that spiritual aspect. Spending time in nature can help in that connectedness to higher power, higher being. Engaging in other spiritual activities that you do enjoy, and then, you know, prayer time. And then this spiritual rest can combine with other ones, like I had said. So a lot of times, like my journal time, I usually have my devotionals out. So it's like I look at it a little bit with that lens. And then a lot of times if I do go into a meditation thing I'm trying to work on, as of late, it's been more of so my faith is something that's very important to me. So I've wanted to actually, like, I feel like we Christians will pray a bunch, but we won't necessarily like listen for an answer. And so that's what I've really wanted to try to do as of late, was like, okay, well, what am I actually listening and hearing? And can my discernment of like, okay, this is the Lord's voice. This is where I'm feeling led. Is that true? And so sitting in silence and kind of decluttering things and allowing that spiritual piece to come through kind of ties all of that together for me. Because I think for me, a spiritual rest is interwoven into all of those parts. And that's just for me personally, but I think it's an important, having that connection and feeling gives you a little bit of hope, and having that connection and feeling, as far as, there's a point, there's purpose, there's a reason, for, you being here and resting and relaxing and finding peace in that.
I love that.
Bit
I
as
love
well.
that. Yeah, I think it, being open to any of these approaches for spiritual rest, to whatever kind of makes you feel connected. Like, one of my favorite things to do for feeling grounded and connected is the grounding outside. So like
Mhm.
barefoot in the grass, in the dirt, even on the concrete or on rocks, like letting my feet feel the earth is incredibly spiritual for me and helps me feel connected. And I think that's a really, really accessible thing to do when we are feeling overstimulated, tired, we have a million things going on. Take your shoes off and go outside and put your feet on the earth and just be, and just let yourself feel whatever
Mhm.
you're going to feel. Like, it doesn't have to be a big ordeal or take a long time. Absolutely love doing that. It's a good reminder for me that I
Mhm.
am connected, that I
Mhm.
am part of a bigger thing. And it just brings me back down. That grounding, true grounding. And then the other
Mhm.
thing that I really, really love is time in nature. So like a hike,
Mhm.
nothing gets me more
Mhm.
connected than a hike in the woods with, with my family or by myself. Again, I'm listening for the leaves and the birds and any other animals I hear. I'm looking at the sky and the clouds, and can I see the moon? Like, I just want to take in the bigger world around
Mhm.
me, because I get so on the hamster wheel, like, a lot. So like, no
Mhm.
one's alone. Like, this is not a perfect world. But when I do have those moments, I try to like feel that the connection that is there. And I get that most when I'm hiking. And so that's something that's always, always helped me.
Mhm. No, that's definitely, takes kind of you out of the equation a little bit, and like
Mm-hmm.
just that, yeah, just being for a minute, which is
Mm-hmm.
good.
Yep.
Okay, so those are all of our types of rest. We've talked a little bit in here, as far as, and we've woven in some ways to achieve it, throughout, but we've mentioned before already scheduling it, which is going to be huge, making sure to, incorporate that into your everyday, being intentional. So this is like picking one, it's not like every day you're going to have all 7 types of rest and that type of thing. And some are going to be combined and other days are going to be better than others, but it's being intentional, seeing what works for you. And then just little mini breaks throughout the day. We've already talked about kind of saying no, setting boundaries, which is going to be key for that. Disconnecting from social media. That's always going to be a good one, that time alone. And time in silence. And then you just making it a habit is, a big thing. And the ebbs and flows. So it will change as as you go through pregnancy. It'll change as you go through postpartum and kids get bigger. It'll change as you age. It'll change as you go through different seasons of life. And that's kind of fun. So what felt good before maybe, doesn't bring the same amount of rest now. And so that's where you can kind of check in and be intentional, and reevaluate,
Constant
what's bringing you rest.
evolution. Yeah. Yeah. And then play around. Everyone's different. Experiment. We've said that kind of multiple times. Like, play around with it. Observe how things are making you feel when you try them out. Be intentional and know that everything is temporary. So like, as you're, nothing is going to stay one way forever. Like, if it's hard now, it won't always be hard. Or if you're doing one thing now, you probably won't always do it, but you'll try something else. So experiment, know that everyone's needs are different. Find what brings you peace, and incorporate this into your daily routine so it's accessible. Just like taking time to take a few deep breaths multiple times a day. Like, that is rest. That's giving yourself an opportunity to rest. So yeah.
I love it. I guess my take home would be I want people to know that you don't have to earn your rest, and you definitely deserve rest. So pick some of these, do them, and then, you're going to want to stay tuned for our next episode, because we're going to talk about how the podcast is going to rest and things that we're going to do. So, yay, I almost forgot to mention that. We didn't talk if I was going to mention that or not. So here we are, I'm mentioning it, and we're going to talk about how the podcast is going to rest. So we're excited for that. And thanks for tuning in today. And stay tuned for all the new that is to come with the Aligned Birth podcast.
Thank you for joining us on the Aligned Birth podcast. We hope you found our discussions informative, inspiring, and enjoyable. Remember, when your body, mind, and intuition are aligned, you have the power to overcome any challenge that comes your way. We appreciate your support and leaving a review or rating, signing up for our newsletter, or becoming a direct listener supporter. Your contribution helps us continue delivering valuable content and reaching more listeners like yourself. Stay connected with us through our newsletter to receive the latest episodes and bonuses straight to your inbox each week. You can also connect with us on Instagram at aligned_birth. All links can be found in the show notes. Together, we can make a difference in the lives of the birthing individuals and new moms. Thank you for being a part of our community. We look forward to sharing more empowering conversations on the Aligned Birth podcast. Until next time.